This lecture deals with the focus on writing, and it's going to cover depth, precision, accuracy, and clarity. All good things when you are writing. Before watching this lecture, you need to do the reading. So what's the reading? In Strunk and Write, Elements of Style, you need to read part 5. It's about 20 pages. I want you to especially focus on reminders 1, 2, 4, 5, 6, 7, 14, 16, 17, and 19, and the asterisked ones even especially more. And then there's a little over a page of Universal Intellectual Standards that I want you to look at, and that's available in Readings for Data Project on the left-hand menu in Learn. All right, so once you've done that reading, I want you to take a look at the final paper rubric. It's on the right. I don't really want you to look at that. It's too tiny, but it is available on Learn. What I want to point out is that the grade is going to depend on 4 different categories. And notice that the first 2 are worth 70% of the grade. And the first one is completeness, are elements present, and the second one is depth, precision, accuracy, and clarity. Okay, so the first one, completeness, says, did you do the assignment? I asked for X, Y, and Z. Did you do X, Y, and Z? And it's really, really important. Everyone should get 20% because that's not hard to follow directions. It's a little bit tedious, perhaps. But I'm sure you've been in classes where your professor didn't give you enough direction. And so in some ways I'm giving you too much direction for this paper, but I want you to get an idea of what professors are actually looking for, and they don't tell you. So I'm telling you, and they're looking for a lot. Look at that thing on the right. That's really things that professors are looking for when they're reading your papers. Okay, so completeness is worth 20%. Half of your grade is in this category of depth, precision, accuracy, and clarity. So let me start with precision and accuracy. That basically means, is what you're saying true? Can it be backed up? Do you have the numbers? Can you tell me exactly what you're saying? So that's accuracy, is it true? And precision is tell me about it. Give me the details. That's really important. And then clarity is, even if you might be accurate, but I can't tell because I'm confused. And in general, if your reader is confused, that's not good. Writing is about communication, and you want to be as clear as possible. So that's really, really important. And finally, depth, which I'll talk about at the end of this lecture, which is really getting into it, not being superficial, but really thinking things through. Okay, so that's really these are things from the Universal Intellectual Standards. That's the thing that is a quality paper when you've really thought things through. That's the thinking part of the paper, and that's why it's worth the most. The other thing, style, that's going to be things like following the conventions for citing references, and then the writing, that's going to be sort of basic do's and don'ts that we're going to cover in another lecture. All right, so let's get going on the completeness, depth, precision, accuracy, and clarity. All right, so the first thing to do with completeness is always to follow the assignment directions. And this is not just in school, this is in life. When you follow the directions, it just works out better. And so you'll be a valued employee if you can pay attention to the details. And sometimes it's not even the details, it's really the big ideas. But the directions, being able to follow the directions are very important. And in this project, I want to make sure that you're covering all of the elements. So following the assignment directions is pretty important. I don't know why my phone is bothering me at this moment. Okay, another way to think about completeness is to don't leave out information. And so you may find that you kind of assume that your instructor already knows everything. I'm joking. Of course you don't assume that. Well, but sometimes you do a little bit, like, oh, they know that. I don't need to explain that. But you do. Anytime your reader comes to be in your writing, you want to assume that they really don't know what you're talking about until you tell them. And that's related to this last point here, which is to be thorough in your explanations. Now, I've read a lot of student papers, and I know right away if a student is kind of doesn't know what to say, because I get a history of a country that's not really what the topic is, or I get a lot of background information. Maybe I get what Webster Dictionary says this term means, and I can sense that the student is sort of panicking. How am I going to fill up these 5 pages or 10 pages? That would be even worse. And really the best way to do that is to be complete. And so to really make sure that you've explained everything thoroughly, and you will have no problem filling out your paper. And that's also once you've done the thinking, which we'll talk about in a second. So I want to show you on the rubric for the final paper, this is for completeness, what an excellent is compared to an acceptable or a poor. All right, so the introduction motivates, introduces thesis, and summarizes approach. Okay, so you need to do all 3 things. If you just introduce the thesis, well, that's acceptable, a C or a B. Okay, that's considered acceptable. And if you include the motivation or approach, but you omit the thesis, well, it looks like the thesis is pretty important. That will be a poor. What about the model and empirical approach? That's another element in your paper. Excellent, presents and explains all elements of model equation, provides model justification with in-text citations, presents all elements of regression equation, and provides a general explanation of regression analysis, includes extensions. So you need to do all of those things to have an excellent paper, to have an A. A B or a C? Well, you present and explain most elements of the model. So that's the completeness, right? You need to hit everything. Every letter, you want to explain it because your reader won't know. Provides reasonable justification for model, but no supporting references. So you left something out. Oops, you left out the extensions. That's okay, but not excellent. And then pours if you left something out. No equation, no justification, no explanations. Those are the most important things. You leave those out, you don't get a lot of credit for it. Okay, what about clarity? Okay, so Strunk and White in Part 5, reminder number 16, says to be clear. This is probably the most important thing I want you to come away from this class about writing. Clarity is absolutely the most important thing. The purpose of writing is to communicate, and successful communication requires that the reader understands exactly what the writer intends. Okay, so it's not a game of, telephone where you whisper it in one ear and it comes out all garbled on the other. Like, that's not what you want. You want it to be very clear that the writer is getting what you are trying to say. A number of the other reminders in Part 5 of Strunk and White are really examples of how to do this, how to be clear. Okay, so reminder 2, write in a way that comes easily and naturally to you, using words and phrases that come readily to hand. Okay, so this is really important. A lot of people, when they're about to write, are like, oh, okay, I need to get formal. I need to put on my uncomfortable shoes, because that's what writing is. And that's a certain kind of writing, but that's not good writing. Good writing is easy. Writing is not easy, but actually the thinking is the hard part. The writing should be easy. Once you know what you want to say it in a way that you would explain it to a friend. I have a device that I use when I'm trying to start and I'm having trouble starting, is that I pretend I'm writing a letter to a friend. So I'll say, dear Eileen, I'm writing this paper about, and I'll do it conversationally, and then I can clean it up a little bit later. But basically, the first part, getting it out, you want to use it the way that you speak. Okay, wait, before I go to that. And so you want to do it the way that you speak, and then just a little more, clean it up a little bit. Okay, so writing in a way that comes easily and naturally is really important. Using words and phrases that come readily to hand, and that's related to reminder 14, avoid fancy words. especially words that you don't really use because you might use them wrong. And the most common comment that I'll write in a student's paper is word choice. Like, no, that's not the right word. Use a word that you know. Your writing may not be fantastically, fantastic, but it will be, if it's really clear, that's the first thing. That's what you really want. And so don't use words that you're not familiar with. Don't abbreviate. That's also related to clarity. If you fill your paper with a bunch of abbreviations, your reader will be unhappy. Your reader will not be able to follow. Okay, when you edit your own work, this is reminder 5, you must revise and rewrite. You really should, you must read it through before you hand it in, even a draft. Okay, what I suggest is to read your writing out loud to someone willing to listen, if possible. That's ideal, because then your listener will say, I don't know what you're talking about, if you can actually get them to concentrate on it. I've tried this with my husband sometimes. He's not that interested. It doesn't work that well. Okay, so let's say you don't have a good listener. You can do it to a pet if you can't find a person. The idea is to do it as if you're trying to explain it, and then you hear what you're saying, and you'll be like, ooh, that didn't make any sense. Okay, and if you don't have a pet, you can do it to an imaginary friend or a plant. Take advantage of the instructor feedback to improve your writing. So you will be getting feedback on writing assignment, well, on all of them, on writing assignment 1, 2, and 3. When you go to write your final paper, use that. And I'll tell you, you don't want your instructor to be annoyed, particularly when they're reading your paper. And I have on more than one occasion been reading something and thinking to myself, wait a minute, I already corrected this. That's really annoying. If I corrected it for you, if I make it a suggestion, please use it. Okay. And then finally, you can't really argue with a comment of unclear, because this means that your reader isn't following. There's no, there's no defense for that. You just have to say, okay, I guess that wasn't clear, and you have to try it over, do it another way. Okay, now about revising and rewriting, the way that this course is set up is that you're going to have 3 pieces of your paper written before you go to write your final paper, and you will have feedback on it. And this is by design. We all know that you have to practice things to get better at them. And it's also based on an informal poll I did for all of my friends who are involved in, who have to write as part of their career. I asked them, well, how did you learn how to write? And the answer that I got to a person, everyone said, there was someone along the way who marked up my writing. Okay, and so, I'm hoping that this will be, I'll be one of those people, or your instructor will be one of those people along that path to improve your writing, someone who really takes a careful look at it. And so it's really important to, when you're rewriting, to look at, okay, what was not clear, or what was wrong with this word choice. I want you to think about that. Okay.